Welcome back to Holistic Health Space podcast. I'm your host, Scarlett. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Brian Hooker. He is the Chief Scientific Officer at Children's Health Defense and Professor Emeritus of Biology at Simpson University in Redding, California. Brian has many accomplishments to his credit, including co-inventor for 5 patents, recipient of the Battelle Entrepreneurial Award in 2001 and the Federal Laboratory Consortium Recognition Award in 1999 for his work on reactive transport in 3 dimensions. The breadth of his over 60 science and engineering papers have been published in internationally recognized peer-reviewed journals. Brian is also a beloved figure in the health freedom movement. He has been active in the autism community since 2001 and has a 19-year-old son with autism. He currently serves on the board of trustees for Focus for Health. In 2013 and 2014, Brian worked with CDC whistleblower Dr. William Thompson to expose fraud and corruption within vaccine safety research in the CDC, which led to the release of over 10,000 pages of documents. He is colleague and close friends with our current HHS Secretary, Bobby Kennedy Jr. The two of them co-authored a remarkable best-selling book, Vax, Unvax, Let the Science Speak. So here is the book that's co-authored by Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Brian Hooker. I highly recommend that every parent read this book before making an informed decision at the pediatrician's office. This book contains massive amount of information, of data comparing the health outcome between vaccinated children and unvaccinated children. A must read. Brian, thank you so much for coming on today. We are so excited to have you. And
You're
as you
very
can see,
welcome.
we have several friends who are, huge fans of your work. And we are so excited to share this moment with you, share this conversation with you. I think we'll go around, introduce ourselves to you and say a word of appreciation to you, and we'll get started. I will start from with myself. My name is Scarlett Fang. I was a grassroots campaigner for Mr. Kennedy when he was running for president in 2023 and 2024. And after he took office as the secretary of HHS, I started this podcast. I got more involved with our local health freedom communities. I am currently working with the CHDCA chapter. And my objective is to educate my peers and hopefully facilitate Bobby Kennedy's mission in HHS. So anybody else want to do next?
I'll jump in. I'm Ursula Conway, and Brian and I know each other well because we've had the pleasure of working together on several projects. I'm president emeritus of the Arizona chapter of CHD, and my focus in the coming year is to reach as many people as possible, whether through speaking engagements or just personal interaction, to help people understand the critical time period we are in with respect to health freedom, and most especially with the awful, damaging vaccine schedule.
And hi, I'm next, Paula Oved. I'm the CEO of the Lighthouse Foundation here in Arizona, and I've been over a decade supporter of Children's Health Defense, and more important, donator, because they need our money to do the work they do. And I was part of Bobby's campaign getting ballot access here in Arizona, and when he shook hands with Trump, I helped reorganize the grassroots to be MAHA, to continue to get the people in there to support Bobby and the important work he needs to do. So we're glad to meet you here online, Brian.
And I'm Austin. I'm an Arizona resident and have worked with Ursula a bit over the last 5 years as a local volunteer, and a local small business owner in Arizona, um, and young person that has just seen everything going on, and happy to help any way I can. So I've known Ursula and Paula quite well, and I'm getting to know Scarlett here. Thank you for having me. And
You're
Brian and
welcome.
I got to meet at least with one of our big Arizona events, Science Unleashed. And so it's great to see you again, Brian. Thank you so much for talking here, and excited to have a, present day take on the all the good things going on and all the concerns and the work still to be done.
And I should mention, Brian, one reason I'm a staunch supporter of children's health defense is both of my children have been impacted by Big Pharma. And so I really appreciate all the work you do.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. I can't, if I can jump in here, Scarlett,
Sure.
I can't thank you enough for, your support, the things that you've done, to help out the health freedom movement, to help out children's health defense. This is such an amazing time, and there's so many people that have been so supportive and are so integral, to the different pieces in your movement and in our movement. I can't thank you enough for just responding with a yes. When you felt like you were prompted to do something, you did it, and who knows what type of impact you've made already, and what's going to happen in the future as well.
Well, with leadership up there, like what you're doing, we feel energized and very motivated to do everything we could in our power. So yeah, let's get started. I'm so excited. I've been following your work for quite some time, and I honestly, you are a huge hero of mine, right up there with Bobby Kennedy. Um, so I'm so excited to have you here. For the audience that doesn't know too much about you, can you briefly share with the audience when and how you started questioning vaccine? You are a scientist. Most scientists and doctors, they never question vaccines. It's kind of a religion for the scientific community. So share with us why, you're different.
Well, my son was born in 1998, and I was just happily minding my own business, doing what good citizens are supposed to do, and that was vaccinating him on time. And so he received all of his vaccines on schedule. Back then, the DTaP, the Hib, and the Hep B all had mercury in them, because we know they came from multi-dose vials, because I can remember them pulling the doses up from the vials. And so he was exposed to, many, many times over the toxic limit for mercury for his weight and his age class. So he was developing normally, but he was tracking slow. But then at 15 months of age, we took him in for his vaccines at that point, and he had an active ear infection. So we asked the nurse practitioner at the time, we said, look, is it okay to vaccinate and be sick? We knew he had an ear infection because we had seen an ear, nose, throat doctor the same day. And she said, "Oh, well, we do it all the time. It's not a problem." But it was a huge problem for him. And he regressed neurologically very, very rapidly after that visit, was very, very sick, treated his fever with Tylenol and baby aspirin, kind of rotating back and forth because his fever was so high, and it lasted about 18 days after that doctor visit.
Oh,
And
goodness.
so he quickly lost all of his speech, lost eye contact, lost joint attention, for a while, even stopped walking unassisted for about 3 months after those vaccines. So we knew something was really, really wrong. And
Mhm.
that started my quest to figure out what was going on. At that point, if it wasn't for an integrative practitioner, I wouldn't even known that there was mercury in his vaccines, and I wouldn't have even known that vaccine injury was even a thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess we signed an informed consent, a vaccine information statement, but honestly, in my frame of reference, I didn't even know that vaccine injury existed.
Yeah, that's most of us. The doctors always tell you it's safe and effective, and and I think because of the education that you went through, you're never supposed to question it.
Right.
Yeah. So
And by the way, Dr. Hooker, my son was born that same year, and I was exactly like you, an engineer, a very educated parent looking into the science all the time, and you didn't know things. Thank you.
No, we didn't know that's and engineers, we like to figure things out. And so,
Yeah.
but there was so little information and it was so ingrained, it was almost like we were automatrons when we went to our practitioner visits. I was more concerned with the practitioner liking us and giving us good health care because he liked us than I was about anything that was being put in my body or my son's body, which was
Mhm.
absolutely wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I have, like, honestly, we just been brainwashed for so long. I think for me, my kids, I got all three of my kids vaccinated in the beginning, and the signs of damages were there. I just couldn't see it. Now that I look back, a lot of things that went wrong, it could very well be attributed to the shots. But back then, it's just you've been blinded to not see anything. So, could you tell us what are some of the key mechanisms through which vaccines cause like things like SIDS, autism, and chronic illnesses?
Well, vaccines are inherently neuroinflammatory. Okay.
Yes.
And if you think of what a vaccine does, it causes inflammation because it alerts your immune system that something is different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And usually that mechanism is augmented by what's called an adjuvant. So that would be primarily aluminum. That's in many of the shots that are still given in the CDC vaccine schedule. And that puts your immune system in high alert and causes inflammation. Well, the brain isn't privileged. It will undergo inflammation just like any other part of the body. In fact, especially when vaccinations are given to young individuals, then the toxic components in vaccines like aluminum and mercury can cross the blood-brain barrier and can get lodged in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens. Mercury goes as molecular mercury, but aluminum goes more as a depot, more as like a small nanoparticle, and can get lodged in the brain as a nanoparticle. To me, from a mechanistic standpoint, then that can do a significant amount of damage because wherever that aluminum depot or wherever that mercury, formerly in vaccines, ends up in the brain, that causes neuroinflammation. Now, neuroinflammatory processes can lead to autism. They have been linked directly to autism. There was a paper that came out in 2019 that showed how neuroinflammatory processes, specifically around a cell type called an astrocyte. An astrocyte is an immune cell in the brain, will cause direct damage to neurons. It will cause direct neuronal damage. And it also alters the connectivity of the brain. The brain's made up of neurons that are interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
and these interconnections are like our brain computer superhighway. And it's been shown that aluminum and other components of vaccines will alter that connectivity, which is a key feature in autism. It can also be a key feature in SIDS because neurological activity can actually affect the breathing of children. especially their breathing during sleeping.
Mhm.
And when it causes that mechanism to be altered, then you run the risk of suffocation, not because the infant's in the wrong position in SIDS, but more because the brain is getting mixed messages on how that infant is supposed to breathe during sleep.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of connections, and I think that you cannot stress enough the fact that whatever inflammatory process a vaccine is doing in your body, whatever heightened immune response you're getting that in the brain as well. It's not just in the immune system, in the circulatory system.
Mhm.
It's not just T and B cells that are responding to that invader that is put in the vaccine, but it's also the brain, it's also the heart, it's the liver, it's the lungs, it's the kidneys. They're all sustaining some type of heightened immune response, and that can and does cause damage.
Mhm. So, what do you think is the percentage of autism cases that's linked to vaccines versus, other environmental causes or genetics?
Well, it's really difficult to put a percentage to that because so many of those factors are interconnected. So when you look at a child who is genetically set up not to be able to detoxify these components,
Yeah.
usually they have genetic defects in two pathways. One's called methylation, and the other one's called sulfation. And genetic defects in these pathways then work in conjunction with contaminants, then these children have a more difficult time detoxifying from. My son, when we looked at his genetic makeup, he was one in a million. I mean, he had a really, really difficult time detoxifying mercury, aluminum, even other heavy metal contaminants that were in his environment, like arsenic in the water,
Mm.
antimony that was used in fire retardant pajamas,
Wow.
uranium that was ubiquitous in our soil where we lived while he was growing up in eastern Washington. So many of these things he could not detoxify, so it's difficult to say that there was one pure source, but I do know, Scarlett, that his regression post-vaccination was the most dramatic thing that we saw.
Mhm.
And so I would say, bringing in another variable, I don't want to make this overly complex, but the other variable that you need to look at is the use of acetaminophen, which
Mhm.
they tell regularly. Practitioners will tell regularly, oh, if your child fevers after a vaccine, use Tylenol or use a generic of Tylenol, which would be acetaminophen. And I think that combination alone probably, along with genetic susceptibility, could probably account for 50% or more of all cases of autism,
Mhm.
especially regressive autism.
Mhm.
Dr. Hooker, I've heard that Japan delayed their vaccines and they've kind of eradicated most of their SIDS death. Is that true? Like the inflammation and all that you're talking about, is it less impactful as the child ages?
It is less impactful as the child ages. I believe that in Japan, their vaccination schedule essentially starts at age 2.
Mhm.
Um, and they did see some problems, specifically with the MMR vaccine, during the time that Andy Wakefield was so vilified because he dare question the MMR vaccine. Then the Japanese were doing something very, very different. And so they delayed vaccinations. I do believe that it helps. Although in full disclosure, I know children who have regressed after a vaccine that have been as old as 4 or 5 years of age.
Mhm.
So I do think that the longer you delay, the better off the child will be. But I do know, very, very public cases of autistic regression where the child was developing normally up to age 4.
Thank you.
Wow. So, Brian, you are famous for this whistleblower case with the CDC, um, Dr. William Thompson. Can you talk a little bit about that story?
Sure, sure. Well, um, I'm so thankful for the producers of the movie Vaxxed, from Cover Up to Catastrophe, because it goes into that whistleblower story in detail. But I was contacted by Dr. William Thompson. He is a senior epidemiologist at the CDC, and he was really involved in the immunization safety office of the CDC during the whole autism vaccines controversy. That really started in 1999, where the CDC started to look at mercury-containing vaccines through the preservative thimerosal,
Mhm.
all the way up to a publication in 2004 regarding the MMR vaccine and autism. In Summarily, the CDC has denied any relationship between vaccines and autism, and that's only changed very, very recently through the work of Secretary Kennedy, where the site that used to say vaccines don't cause autism now has an asterisk and gives all the provisos and gives a comprehensive, really, story of what the CDC has and hasn't examined in the cases of autism. It's much more forthcoming. But Dr. Thompson revealed this fraud to me in phone conversations that we had and in email exchanges that we had starting in November of 2014, 13, all the way until August of 2014, where he made a public statement regarding the relationship between the MMR vaccine and the timing of the MMR vaccine and autism in African American males. And what he disclosed to me specifically, and he gave me the data, and I found this out on my own. But he also disclosed to me that the CDC found this as well, was that African American males that got the MMR vaccine on time were about 3.5 times more likely to get an autism diagnosis than if they merely waited until those same African American males were 3 years of age to get their MMR.
Mhm.
So this really set off a firestorm. I started to publicize this directly through the Autism Media channel, then that was being run by Andy Wakefield and Polly Tommy, also a very, very prolific advocate for vaccine safety in children. And we had an army of social media warriors. And within months, we had like 5 billion impressions on Twitter about hashtag CDC whistleblower. So this became a very huge story. It was picked up by alternative media, lightly by mainstream media. But very quickly, the publication that I had published regarding the African American male effect of the MMR vaccine was retracted in October of 2014. So that became the story. But Andy Wakefield, Polly Tommy, Del Bigtree did not let the story go. Many, many health freedom advocates did not let the story go. And then it finally was released in the movie Vax from Cover Up to Catastrophe that came out in April of 2016.
Wow, that's so remarkable. I wish I've known, that earlier. I wouldn't have had my children vaccinated. It's just the cover up is just so hideous. It's
Right.
injured generations of children. Yeah. That's where my fire comes from. I do not want any of that to happen to any more children. So, but still, a lot of parents are still, well, they still listen to their pediatricians or they're on the fence. Um, and a lot of parents are not very savvy, in reading scientific literature. So if you are faced with a new parent, what do you say to them? What is the most convincing evidence to present to them? Vaccines cause harm. You need to really think about whether or not to get your children vaccinated.
Well, really, the most compelling evidence that I see are new studies that have come out starting in 2017, where fully vaccinated children are compared to fully unvaccinated children. The Health and Human Services Department of the government has never done that study. And up until very recently, they dare not do that study. And I think they were afraid of what they would find. But there in the literature base, there's about 6 to 8 studies that do this, that look at the health of the unvaccinated children versus the health of the vaccinated children. I've never seen anything like that. I've co-authored two of the studies that I did with a prolific researcher, Neil Miller. We see at least 4 to 5 times the rate of autism in vaccinated children versus unvaccinated children. If we look at vaccines in the first year of life, if they're partially vaccinated versus unvaccinated, the partially vaccinated children are at least twice as likely to get diagnosis of developmental delays, 4 times as likely to get diagnosis of asthma, and twice as likely to get diagnosis of gastrointestinal issues, as well as recurrent ear infections. And so when I study the healthy unvaccinated, they are so much healthier. And it seems like their immune systems, even when it comes to infectious diseases, are much stronger. They have much more of a robust response. And it wasn't really, Scarlett, until I looked at the healthy unvaccinated that I realized that it's a shame what the vaccine schedule is doing to the children of the United States. Again, the most robust children were the ones that had never received even one vaccine.
Okay. So your stand, from your point of view, we should avoid all vaccines. We shouldn't even consider even one of the slew of vaccines we are offered or that are available to us.
Well, I want to encourage people to have frank conversations with their care providers and take this evidence directly to their healthcare providers. They may not know. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, health practitioners spend most of their time seeing patients and have little time to look at the open scientific literature. So, if you want to be a good consumer, then part of that job may be educating your practitioner. If the practitioner shuts down the conversation, then it's time to find a new practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not an MD, I'm a PhD, so I don't really give healthcare advice, but I do want to encourage people of what the science is showing me. And these are peer-reviewed papers that appear in the National Library of Medicine. These are not fly-by-night journals, they're not fly-by-night publications. They are peer-reviewed and they're in journals that have received the National Library of Medicine stamp of approval. So, I want to encourage these conversations, and I want you also, as a parent, to know that there are practitioners that are friendly to non-vaccinators, and that if you contact Children's Health Defense, if you contact any other organizations, Physicians for Informed Consent is another one, another one, IMA, which used to be FLCCC, is another organization where you can find health freedom friendly practitioners
Mm-hmm.
that are not going to coerce you into vaccinating your children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great that we have these organizations to help with. Otherwise, I think that you just your regular run-of-the-mill pediatrician, they're really not incentivized to really look at the data because
No,
the perverse financial incentives from the industry.
If I could just point out that many physicians still are reluctant to go public
Mm-hmm.
with their openness to reviewing the vaccine schedule legitimately with patients because their jobs are at risk, their livelihoods are at risk. And so it's often that the referral process happens more on a word of mouth kind of exchange
Mm-hmm.
than through any official list because the potential cost for those practitioners is high.
right, right. We keep this information very, very private and on a need to know basis. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm looking for a practitioner in such and such area," then we want to hold that information in confidence because unfortunately, it is many of the medical boards um, of the states that dictate sort of disciplinary actions for state practitioners and the licensing of state practitioners. Many of those medical boards are influenced by big pharma, are influenced by big vaccine manufacturers,
Mm-hmm.
and they are not educated. And so uh, a lot of these practitioners, Ursula, like you said, are more in hiding. They don't want word to get out because if word gets out, then they could potentially be sanctioned by their medical boards. And yes, some individuals have lost their medical licenses over this.
Okay, so just not to be open about who's vaccine friendly, who's not willing to look at the data. Just contact the organization and get the information yourself, and then go see them. Right? That's the right way to go.
That is the right way to go. My hope and prayer and fight is that this changes,
Yes,
that
yes.
practitioners will practice medical freedom and bodily autonomy openly and without fear of reprisal.
Yes. So I'm from California, and as the other Arizonians know, that we live in a medical dictatorship. So we practically built a fortress, to fend off any health reform that's coming from the federal level. What is your advice for California parents and the medical freedom community? What are we supposed to do now?
Well, California is a very difficult state to live in. I live in
It is.
California. I live
Yeah.
in Redding, California, which
Hmm.
is far north. And what I would uh, really suggest is that you get to know your medical community well within your region, and you do a ton of homework. Getting a medical exemption for vaccination, which is our only option in California, is nearly impossible, to the point where I have told people, they say, should I move out of state? And I say, yes, you should move out of state. I mean, there are specific reasons why even my family lives in California, regarding my son. And if services were ever tied to vaccination status, which I don't think that they would be because of the Intellectuals with Disabilities Act and the Intellectual Disability Education Act. I don't think that they can require vaccination in any state for getting services. In fact, even in California, if you have an IEP, if your child has an individualized education plan because they're receiving special education services, they do not have to be vaccinated. Many school districts will hide that fact, or they may not know that fact. But if your son or daughter has an IEP, then they do not have to be vaccinated to go to a California school. Many people do not know that.
Hmm.
But honestly, if it wasn't for extenuating circumstances, I don't even think my family would live in California.
I
Well, the
agree
weather is
with you,
nice
doctor.
here.
I know several parents with special needs, and they stay in California for the services. And my daughter, we were in Ojai, California, was the last year that you could get exemptions before they turned it no exemptions, even medical. So, but yeah, everyone's welcome in Arizona. We're just putting that out there.
It's
Come
on the
join
bucket
us.
list. We have a
Yeah.
list. We have a list of where we could move. Arizona is at or near the top all the time. Sorry, Austin, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, come join us in Arizona. But a little auxiliary thought to that. As not very familiar with the matter, not a parent yet to date, and a lot of parent friends. But can people in California see a doctor outside of state for a medical exemption?
They cannot get a medical exemption out of state. It has to be somebody within the state of California.
That's
I,
licensed.
and for the school district to honor that. Now there are lots of different things that I always encourage people to contact me directly, to contact Children's Health Defense directly, given your situation, given your extenuating circumstance, even in California, because there are medical providers. Again, it's the same situation. It is open season on medical providers that provide medical exemptions in the state of California. In fact, as a part of the state policy and state law, if any one practitioner gives a certain number of medical exemptions, they're automatically investigated by the medical board.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. Like, what another example of the dictatorship that we live in. Just how sandboxed it
Exactly.
is to begin with, that it has to come from the same jurisdiction of licensing to even get an exemption, let alone the freedom to go see any doctor you might choose, wherever they are, right?
Yeah, it
And
is
Exactly.
crazy here. Yeah. Yeah, so we talk about freedom, choice, all that stuff. But in the era of self-amplifying mRNA, the shedding shots and the aerosolized shots, they're intending to like spray on us from the sky, and also the RNA technology they spray on crops, and also the vaccines that they inject in our livestock, in the food supply. I feel like choice, freedom is, it's not real. It's just smoke and mirror. Like we get shit, from other people all the time. Like what, like how, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, the model is if you look at the World Health Organization and the organizations behind it, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, cradle to grave vaccination for everybody. Nobody escapes that. And so I think that's one of the reasons that there's so much money, so much research money in developing self-amplifying RNA vaccines. Self-amplifying technology basically is a ring of genetic code or a portion of genetic code that not only you could inject in your body, but when it gets into other human cells in your body or outside of your body, then it can replicate. It's what we call replication competent.
Yeah.
So whatever that genetic code is, it can produce more of itself in your body, or if I'm in close proximity to Ursula and Ursula's body, if for some reason there's a respiratory droplet or there's, something else that is shared that might have that genetic code, then it can replicate in her body, other bystanders'
Yeah.
bodies, and then it can continue to produce spike protein for coronavirus, other antigens for other viruses or other types of diseases that they want to vaccinate for. But my my recommendation is to be vigilant, um, and to know your own health and health concerns, because the even without the self-amplification process, we're finding this genetic code specifically for vaccines in individuals during the COVID era that were never vaccinated. We're finding spike protein that is vaccinia related spike protein in individuals who are never vaccinated. And early on in the pandemic, we found it in individuals that were never vaccinated and never had COVID-19, never had the infection.
Hmm.
So that is really suspicious to me. So if people think that they might have long COVID or long COVID vaccine injury, I recommend that they reach out to an integrative practitioner, either directly in person or by telemedicine. There are tests that you can run that you can see whether that has happened to you. And also make sure that what you're consuming, what you're breathing, is as clean as possible. You can get a certified non-GMO crop certifications right there. I know the individual who came up with all the testing for the certification. I recently toured their laboratory, and it made me feel much, much better about that label. Um, don't assume anything, because organic crops can be sprayed with glyphosate, can be sprayed with Roundup, and there are some organic oats and wheats that are sprayed with Roundup. I like to source organic grains directly from Europe, specifically from Italy, if you must consume grains. And then as far as the self-amplifying technology, we need to fight. We need to make sure that none of that is ever approved and licensed in the United States. None of that technology can ever be approved. And so therefore we need to be vigilant and have our eyes watchful on the USDA as well as on the FDA for the approval of these products.
So do we have any bills relating to that RNA technology? Like, I think ideally we should have a constitutional amendment, to prevent any future perpetrating substances that, injected in our food supply. But like, do we have any bill on the agenda yet?
I believe that there's a bill in the Senate right now. The champion against this RNA technology would be Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul from
Mhm.
Kentucky, who is a big friend of health freedom, along with Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin.
Yes.
They have been very, very vocal about vaccine injury in general. And I do believe I'm going to have to double check on the state of that legislation. It might still be being authored directly by Rand Paul and the committees that he serves on. Um, but I do know also there is a House bill right now from an Arizona representative, Paul Gosar, um, to abolish the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program that would remove the liability shield so vaccine manufacturers will once again be responsible for the safety of their vaccines.
Hmm. That'd be
And
awesome.
Scarlett,
Yes.
Dr. Hooker, if you're not aware, I know at the state level, Arizona and some other states are trying to get sovereignty over, the spraying in our skies, geoengineering, all kinds of MAHA things and vaccines. Because our hope is when, as we more states over time get the legislation in place, it makes it easier to get it at the federal level. But right now, the fight is on the each state level also to help facilitate that. And
Again, thank you so much, Paula.
Ursula and I work with Irene Peasy from Aaron Series Law Firm, and we work with our senators and representatives here to work on these laws and stuff.
That's
Thank
excellent.
you.
Thank
I
you.
can't emphasize enough working at the state level. Because there are a lot of sovereignty issues that are states' right issues, and there are states that are taking this into their own hands. You look at Florida, you look at
Mhm.
Louisiana, you look at Arizona. Arizona, my hat is off to you because it's not really that blue of or that red of a red state. I
Right.
don't even, what would we consider it? Purple?
Yeah, it's purple. During the last election cycle that Bobby was running for, it was 40% independent, 29% Republican, and 29% Democrat. A little more have moved to being registered Republicans for medical freedom, but it's still a third, a third, a third. So we,
Wow.
as the independents, which a lot of Bobby's supporters are, we have a big voice at the table right now. And that's what AZ Maha along with Children's Health Defense, are working very hard together in Arizona.
So thankful for the work
Yeah.
that you're doing. It's
Awesome.
so important. And it serves as a model. Other states can look over your shoulder and see what you're doing. We have fights in Hawaii, we have fights in Maine, West Virginia, Mississippi, Connecticut, obviously New York. And if you live in these draconian states like New York and California, don't give up hope because we have a lot of legal action going on as well
Hmm.
in these states because of rogue legislators that, don't seem to read the Constitution.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. So I know you'll have to go in a bit, but I want to talk a little bit about Bobby Kennedy. What is in your mind, his boldest move so far?
Oh my goodness, there have been so many. He's only been doing this 10 months. He got sworn in on February 19th of 13th, 2025. So, a little more than 10 months. I think that looking at the revision of the website where it says vaccines don't cause autism
Yeah.
was such a genius move. And it was so hopeful for all of us that have neurodevelopmentally challenged children that are, regardless of whether they're on the autism spectrum or not. um, there's been so much gaslighting, and there's so many, ways to blame a parent of a neurodevelopmentally disabled child for
Yeah.
their child's disability. It's old moms, it's old dads, it's bad sperm, it's crazy moms, it's crazy
Yeah.
dads, fat moms, everything. Everything you can do, it is, there was a practitioner back in the 50s that came up with the term refrigerator mom. His name was Bruno Beetlheim. And so, it seemed like that ushered in the era that, okay, when all else fails, we'll blame the parents because you couldn't certainly blame vaccines.
Yeah.
But Secretary Kennedy, with that move, with also taking the COVID shot off of the schedule, showing that it really has never been approved for children. And now looking, this week, there's the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices is going to look at the hepatitis B shot at birth. Okay,
Hmm.
so we're making significant ground and we're asking questions that have never been asked before.
Yeah, I'm just so in awe for all the work that he has been doing, and now that he's doing it on the highest level in the federal government. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful that he's doing that. So is there anything that we can do to help him, deal with the pushback from the industry?
Wow, that's such a good question. And I would encourage everybody to jump in on that quiz question too, because I do not have the corner of the market of answers for this. I see a lot of activity and support in social media. I think that that one of the things that you can do is reach out to your federal representatives. And even if they're Democrats, it doesn't matter, Democrat or Republican, independent, let them know that you think that Secretary Kennedy is doing a really, really good job, that that he is doing his able best in order to restore health. Uh, it's not any medical program. It's not a pharmaceutical. It is simply make America healthy again. And the biggest priority is the chronic disease epidemic in children. And so emphasizing that and emphasizing the good things that Secretary Kennedy is doing with your elected officials at the federal level, even at the state level, we've had so much activity from state executive branches, from state, legislators that have wanted MAHA principles enacted in their states. So, don't tire of that. I know a lot of us are super busy. A lot of us might have special needs kids and adults at home. Any little thing that you can do in order to show your support is going to make a difference.
Hmm.
And Brian, it may be even more important to have those conversations with um, Democratic or some of the Republican um, committee people who don't necessarily support Bobby. They
Right.
need to understand how many of us are out there who believe in what Bobby's doing, and that will keep that in mind when the next election rolls around.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
Great.
agree with Ursula. One of the things we're doing in Arizona is, and I talked to Senator Shamp, some of our HHS co-chair and chair, because a lot of Bobby Kennedy people I was 50 years Democrat progressive. Last people I gave money to was AOC and Bernie. We are going to go in with independents that were Democrats and talk to all of our Democratic people and say, hey, in this purple state, these are the bills we care about. Will you sign on to them? And so we can vote for you. So we're going to try to go that way as independents now. But we should do that at the state level, Ursula. I'm going to bring you with me. We're going to go talk to all of our Arizona Democratic representatives.
Without a
It
doubt.
can be quite a fun event. It can be
It,
quite a fun day. People think that it's daunting and weird. I go to Sacramento, so I deal with a lot of rejection. Um, because I've seen, I remember in the days of like SB 277 back in 2015,
Mm-hmm.
I'd show up in a meeting with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and see some junior representative just like rip him a new one, and he would just smile and laugh, and you just gotta take these things in stride, but join forces, go as a group,
Yeah.
don't go it alone. Bring a friend, and go to Senator Mark Kelly's office. Oh my goodness. He
He
needs
needs
to
to
be
hear from us.
educated. He
Yeah.
does. He needs, I don't
We're
know what
all independents and we can vote either way. So
Mm-hmm.
listen to us, please, Mr. Kelly.
yeah, who's the other senator, the US senator in Arizona? I forget.
Gallegos,
Yeah,
Rudy
he was just
Gallegos.
elected in.
Right, right. Okay, that's right. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, so he's a freshman senator,
Correct.
and you can get him started on the right foot.
Yep. They need to know that
They do.
there are a lot of people who care about children's health and support Bobby.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, Brian, do you have any new research or new development that you think that's important for the audience to know?
Well, so much regarding the relationship between vaccines and autism. We're working right now on a set of articles regarding mechanistically what happens, because we believe, and I think it's plain as the nose in your face, that it is biologically plausible, and it's biologically just without a shadow of a doubt, the mechanisms that show where vaccine additives and vaccines themselves, the live viruses, the aluminum, the formaldehyde, the polysorbate 80, are the perfect storm in causing neurodevelopmental disabilities and neurodegenerative disabilities, especially in our elderly. So we're working heavily in that.
Wow.
We're still working regarding COVID, the COVID shot, and then also looking mechanistically at acetaminophen. I think that the administration has been very, very forthcoming regarding warning about using baby Tylenol and generic brands of baby's acetaminophen, especially because that neonatal and postnatal window is so important to avoid exposure to acetaminophen. And so we're working mechanistically to show that. We're working on with epidemiology to show, how awful that combination can be. Vaccines followed by acetaminophen use, or even preloading acetaminophen prior to a vaccination visit, I think, can be the one-two punch. So we have lots of research coming out. We have 10 papers right now that we're working on at Children's Health Defense, scientific publications that will be in peer-reviewed journals.
Awesome. So, how do people follow your work, your social, your website?
You can follow me specifically at Brian Hooker, PhD, or Dr. Brian Hooker on Instagram. Also, please go to the website childrenshealthdefense.org. If you're specifically interested in science, there's a whole pull down tab of science where we have lots of information featuring the COVID index, which is an initiative of CHD Arizona that we're so proud of and we're so thankful for.
Ursula.
Um, and many, many other things. Check us out at chd.tv. I have my own webcast at Doctors and Scientists at chd.tv. We also have Vaccine of the Week, where we go through in detail the package insert of every vaccine on the childhood schedule.
Awesome, awesome. Does anybody have any questions? I think Brian may need to go soon. Okay, Ursula.
Okay. So, Brian, you mentioned 10 papers coming up. I'm curious about how you and the science team lay out a strategy for what you're going to work on in the next 12 months, let's say, because there are so many topics. And how do you decide that you're going to spend any time on acetaminophen when it seems like vaccines are so much have a larger causal relationship to autism? So I'm just curious if you can summarize for us how you allocate those precious resources.
Well, we want to make sure that we are creating the biggest impact in improving childhood health, really. And I think that it's multifaceted. Vaccines are a huge part, and really what changed me was when I looked at the health of the unvaccinated. We do have a movie coming out next summer called Unvaxxed, that looks specifically at the health of the unvaccinated. I just was down in Austin, Texas. I get to be a producer. I think I get a funny producer hat and everything this time. So this is the first time I'm going to be a producer on one of the Vax movies. So I was down in Austin talking about that. The reason why we went after acetaminophen is that 1-2 punch, is that any way that we can prevent specifically a neurodevelopmental disability, especially a regressive neurodevelopmental disability, I think that it's important. So we need to look at not only the combination of vaccines and acetaminophen, but also what acetaminophen does on its own. And this is very recent for me, Ursula. I wasn't really convinced of any connection until really July of 2025, when I was in close proximity and worked directly with William Parker, the researcher out of University of North Carolina that has been championing of this. If I didn't think it was important, we wouldn't do it. Other things that we're looking at, I do not want to abandon the research of the COVID shot, because we want to learn how to recover people. And people are still getting COVID shots. That's a dwindling population of people getting COVID vaccines, fortunately, I think. But we want to look at the recovery of what do we do with a society that has been inundated with this messenger RNA technology?
Yeah, really important.
Good question.
Thank
Quick
you.
note on that concept and with the mind of solutions. What do you think about leucovorin? And maybe is that any much the same of or very different from just methylated folate?
Well, I was skeptical at first. The jury is still out for me because methylated folate is a little different from what I've heard, and I've consulted with the MAPS doctors, with other practitioners to see what is leucovorin. Leucovorin is folinic acid, methylated folate is different. And from what I've heard, they can impact two different pathways depending on the genetic makeup of that particular child. So, full disclosure, we're going to try leucovorin for my son. I am. I'm going to try it. I mean, there's no sweat off my back trying something that, is just high dose folinic acid. We gave him folinic acid, but we never gave him the dosage quite as high that it is in leucovorin. So, the jury's still out. Once I know for my own son, I will be reporting back.
Wonderful.
Best of luck. Well, thank you so much, Brian. We really, really appreciate this great conversation. Appreciate this great information. I hope we can invite you back at some point, and we'll talk more, more new development, both in terms of your own research and in terms of how the policies are changing, how much more we know and how much more we are revealing to the public. So
absolutely.
so much.
Anytime I get together with, my Arizona friends and you, Scarlett, that's time well spent.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
By the way, this is a loose grassroots coalition largely put together by Paula and people like Scarlett. So we do go across states, and it's just a bunch of people who care about the health of our children. So
Yes.
thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.